Are you thinking about switching? Have you had enough of Echoes and Alexa and you're ready to go over to Siri and HomePods? Or are you trying to decide which one you should go with out of the two? Well, in this video, I'm going to cover some of the important differences and things that I think Echo users should know before making the switch, and if you're buying your first smart speaker, the things you should know. Over the last year, I've really grown frustrated with Echoes, especially Echo Shows, with all their ads on them. I actually made a video on why I got rid of all the Echo Shows, and a video on why I've lost faith in Amazon. I'll put links to both of those videos in the description, but after making both of those videos, I've heard from others who are feeling the same way, that they're done with their Echoes. Some folks are making the switch over to HomePods, others are sticking with Echoes because they've already invested in that ecosystem. First, one of the biggest benefits of going with an Apple Home is the integration with other Apple devices. If you use an iPhone or an iPad, if you have a bunch of Mac stuff, going with an Apple Home is a no-brainer. The real strength of the ecosystem is that tight integration. With an Apple Home, you can have automations triggered based on your location, and if you use shortcuts, even settings on your phone. Like for example, you can come home and it knows your phone is nearby and it turns on some lights for you. Or create a shortcut where you put your phone in Do Not Disturb and it automatically adjusts the temperature. If you're already deep in the Apple ecosystem, this tight integration across your devices and services is a game changer. Alexa has a lot of features and goes wide, but it doesn't go very deep into a lot of things that the Apple Home goes into. Now, second thing you should know is you don't have to be an Apple user to have an Apple Home. If you have an iPad, you could start an Apple Home. I know that sounds weird if you're an Android user. You're like, I don't want to start an Apple Home. Do you have an Amazon phone? Is all your stuff Amazon? You got an Amazon PC? No, it's just a third-party device that we've worked into our life. Really no difference taking a iPad and using it to control your smart home. It's not like you pick up your phone and you just, hey, talk to Alexa, and it automatically controls it. You're still speaking to a speaker. And as an Android user, you would just speak to the speakers. And if you need to tweak anything, you do it on the iPad. For those of you who are thinking you don't want to get trapped in Apple's walled garden, what do you think Amazon's becoming? It's not a walled garden. What they've done is they've walled up Times Square with all the billboards so they can advertise. Either way, you're trapped in an ecosystem. I'll take the garden any day. Next, let's talk about what you need to start your Apple Home. Like I said, you don't need to be an iPhone user. You will need an iPhone or an iPad to set up your HomePods, or with an Apple TV, you would log into an iCloud account. If you have a bunch of Apple devices, you can manage your smart home from any of them in the Apple Home app. And if you just have one Apple device, you manage it on that. You will need a HomeKit hub, and pretty much all of Apple's HomePods and Apple TVs can serve as a HomeKit hub. Their most recent 64 gigabyte Wi-Fi only version can't be a Thread hub. Now, the reason you need a hub is so your devices can talk to the hub, and the hub will talk to the internet as needed. There's no reason all your devices should have to talk to the cloud in order to make things happen. Where in an Echo and Alexa ecosystem, you're linking to your accounts that are being controlled from the cloud. Most Echoes can't do anything locally. With an Apple Home, you can actually run it without being connected to the internet. Once you have that hub, you buy supported devices, you pair them up, and you're ready to go. Even if you don't want to do any of the smart home stuff. If you're an Apple user and you have Apple Music, you can start using that right away. If you have it recognize your voice when you make requests, it'll know who you are and will reference your media or your calendar or messages. Next, let's talk about limited devices and compatibility with smart devices. If you look at the Echoes, you have Echoes without screens and Echoes with screens, and you have them at all different price points. With HomePods, you don't have a smart display, which has held people back from going over to HomePods. Instead, you have a $300 smart speaker. That sounds great, but it really should be like $200 to $250. Your other choice is the HomePod Mini. Now, I know there's Echo folks out there that are going, the HomePod Mini is overpriced. Apparently, it's not overpriced. Amazon has lost billions selling their devices underpriced. I guess if Apple wanted to lose money on the devices, they can do what Amazon did. Now, Amazon, on the flip side, like I said, you have all the different choices in Echoes. You have also the largest range of smart devices. Pretty much anything will work with Alexa. You can have the cheap budget stuff all the way up to the high-end smart devices, and they're going to work on Alexa. Now with Apple Home, HomeKit devices have been usually more expensive, and you have a lot less choices with them. Many of the popular brands, like Ring, doesn't work with Apple Home. There's a lot of Ring users out there that aren't going to switch to an Apple Home because of that. Something that's helped a lot with device compatibility is Matter. If you're not familiar with that, it's a smart device standard that was released a couple of years ago. Matter devices are meant to work with all the smart assistants. They're meant to be easier to set up while still having the same security benefits that Apple's HomeKit brought. These Matter devices are making it more affordable for people to switch over to an Apple Home. But unfortunately, Matter isn't standardized yet, and it's a little bit of a pain dealing with them. Also on the Matter side with Echoes, you have to buy the right Echo to serve as a Matter controller, where any HomePod can serve as a Matter controller. Now, if you are switching over to an Apple Home, there are options to connect non-supported devices, but none of them are really that easy to do. You could go with Homebridge or something like Hoobs, but they require configuration that I don't think most people are going to do. So you might have to write off some of these devices, which brings me to this next one. It's a big one. You're going to have to accept that you're going to lose some smart devices moving over to an Apple Home. It's just the reality of it. It's the reality of switching to anything. I say this because I would not let $200, $300, $400 invested into the Amazon ecosystem over the past 7 years keep you trapped in something that you're not enjoying. It's just a cost of switching to stuff. From the beginning, I was saying get stuff that worked with all the smart assistants. And some of y'all chose to cheap out and buy all the cheapy, crappy stuff, and now you got to replace it. And it's going to cost twice as much because you got to replace it. There's a lot of garbage for the smart home out there. So I feel like it's the one area in the tech world where everybody's got blinded by price. It's too expensive, too expensive. I know the majority of people watching this don't buy the cheapest version of everything else in their life. So why do it to your smart home? I've invested in smart switches that are so much better than Wi-Fi versions, and I don't mind investing in them because I know I am going to use these things for years, so I don't ever want to have a problem with them. Next, you need to figure out what kind of assistant you want. Are you looking for a smart assistant to ask questions to give you a joke of the day, to tell you an interesting fact, to let you know about your commute or what's coming up on your day? Well, if you're looking for all those kind of third-party integrations and all that assistant-y stuff, you're not going to enjoy an Apple Home. An Apple Home is about automating your home. It's about making requests to Siri to integrate with your other Apple apps and controlling them. I don't think Siri is a great smart assistant, but Siri and HomePods are great smart home controllers. I find Siri's great for working within my Apple apps. I love that I could say send a message, it knows it's my voice and will send messages from the native message app. Not having to send messages from Amazon app to Amazon app. And no, for me, I don't ask my Echoes to give me any kind of information. That's what Google's for and my phone. I'd rather ask Google and get real results out of it. For me, it's about setting timers. It's about automating things. Yeah, I need a smart home controller, not an assistant to talk to me. Think about that, what you're really looking for. Because if you ask Siri a question, you're only going to get an answer to that question. On the flip side, you ask Alexa and she'll offer up everything she knows and then follows up with, by the way, did you know that I can do this? By the way, did you know I can do that? For me, instead of jokes of the day and facts of the day, I'm going to go with integration with my calendar, messages, phone calls, notes, reminders, and everything else. Now let's talk about privacy versus convenience. If you go with the Echoes, you're going with them for convenience. I mean, these Wi-Fi smart devices, everyone's making them. What service they connect to, what data they're sharing, all that, you have no control over any of that. But with Apple Home stuff, it has to be certified to a certain standard, to a HomeKit standard. It requires an extra step that majority of the companies either can't afford to do for their product or they choose not to do. With Home HomeKit devices, your automations and information is stored locally, and not everything needs to go talk to the cloud. You're going to use the internet, you're outside your house, to talk to the hub to let it talk to everything. On the other hand, with everything being cloud-based with Alexa, it is going to help their AI capabilities. They are bringing in more data that I think will keep Alexa being smarter than Siri. Next, let's talk about automations and routines and the differences between them. With Echoes and Alexa, you have routines, and these routines have smart home options, but they don't go into as much detail as Apple Home does. But with Alexa, you have all these other things that can be written into routines and automations. For me, all of them are basically crossed off. I need none of those things. I don't want my alarm going off in the morning and then having Alexa give me an update, a weather update, then the joke of the day, and I don't want anything talking to me in the morning. I really only use my smart speakers for automating my smart devices, the occasional request like timers, weather. With HomePods, I use it to integrate with my Apple apps. With my Echoes, I would use them to control my smart home and for the occasional request. I didn't need any of those third-party skills unless it was required for the smart device. With the HomePods, I'm not missing any of those things in automation. My HomePods, I pretty much use them the same way, except on top of that, I can interact with my different Apple apps, and I have a couple of them paired up to serve as speakers for TVs, like in my office and out in our garage. I would say if you're using a bunch of those different options within routines other than just smart home control, then Apple Home's not going to really be for you. A big difference with Apple Home and automations is that it goes into so much more detail. You can have automations that are affected by whether you're in the house or not. If your phone is in the house, then cameras can go to streaming only, so it never records anything. And then once your phone and maybe your partner's phone is out of the house, it flips those cameras over to streaming and recording mode. The thing that's cool about Apple Home is you can take advantage of shortcuts to take your automations to the next level. You can automate your smart devices and trigger scenes and different actions within shortcuts, but you can automate so much more beyond that. I can have things triggered based on actions with my phone. If you open Apple's Shortcut app and you look at their gallery of all the different automation things in there, yeah, shortcuts can automate your life, where the Home app and the Alexa app automate your house. Next, let's talk about the apps themselves. This is a big difference. One of the things I love about the Apple Home app is that it's focused on being a smart home controller. It's not trying to do anything more. Where the Alexa app was loaded with suggestions and all kinds of stuff that it never served as a smart home controller. Now they made it better where you could put your favorite devices on there, but it still is trying to do a lot of other things. The Alexa app is trying to cover all different things, and they even squeeze advertising in there too, which is ridiculous. You're like a little mini ad shoved in the app to control your devices. I just find that the Alexa app is clunky. Just moving around through smart devices and finding things, it's clunky, and it just doesn't seem like you could do as much. Where the Apple Home app is a very clean interface, it's fast. When you select something, it happens quickly on there. When you bring up devices, things respond quickly. A beautiful thing is that Home app is the same across all the Apple devices. So I can pick up my iPad, boop, trigger the same scene. It's great that on my Mac here, I have a widget that has different scenes set up for the office here, so that I can quickly go to my video look or just my general lighting. I've taken advantage of shortcuts too, so that I can not only automate my smart home, I can have a bunch of different apps loaded with one click, or have apps close with one click. If you are getting into Apple Home, definitely take a look into shortcuts, look at personal automations. It is amazing all the different stuff you can do. Next, let's talk about the third-party support. This is where Amazon has Apple beat. Apple is too closed down. It would be great to have it opened up more. Like for Apple, you have limited streaming options on there. For example, Spotify doesn't work with HomePods and can't be set up as the default service, which I've learned that is a Spotify issue, not an Apple issue. Spotify has chosen not to take advantage and make their stuff available on HomePods. So if you are using Spotify or a non-supported service, it might be frustrating to you to switch over to HomePods. Now, one thing that is nice is handoff and AirPlay. That allows you to start playing something on your phone and then send it over to your HomePods or Apple TV to play. With HomePods, there is no third-party app store, which it would be nice to be able to bring in more third-party services into the HomePod. I use Apple Music, so the HomePod's great, especially when you turn on personal request. It knows who's asking for music and will play from their playlist, where with Echoes and using Spotify, family plans don't work well on the Echoes. So I do appreciate with my HomePods and Apple Music that we each have our own libraries to work from. I would say that, yeah, with Echoes, you have way more third-party integration all around, and with HomePods, you have way more first-party native integration. So you pick what offers more for you. Next, I mentioned this earlier, Apple Home is better for that local control, which if you have a smart home, that's a much better option, especially if your internet goes down or if it gets spotty at times. You don't want your lights to have to rely on an internet connection to turn on. That's silly. You don't want your automations not to work because for some reason your internet's down, so Alexa can't talk to the internet, so it's worthless. We're at a point now where that's just kind of silly that there isn't that local control. And hopefully with the next version of HomePods, they will be more powerful and we'll be able to have local AI control right on the HomePods. But we'll have to see with that. I don't like everything talking to the cloud. I understand for third-party interactions, but for Echoes and Alexa, it's ridiculous that more stuff by now does not happen locally. That pretty much everything you ask for has to go to the cloud. Overall, there are some big differences between these, whether it be the cost difference, which can seem big between the two, or just the actual use of these speakers. I've heard of folks that have made the switch to HomePods and they're disappointed because the assistant stuff isn't there for them to be able to do. That Siri is dumb at times. So hopefully this video helped you out, showed you some of the differences. Let us know in the comment section if you're thinking about making the switch or if you recently switched to Apple Home. If you found this video helpful, please hit that like button and subscribe for the next one. Next, check out this video over here for 35 HomePod tips. So if you do make the switch, there's a lot of stuff for you to do. And then you can check out this video up here if you'd like to know why I'm not using Echo Shows anymore. So I'll see you at one of those. Thanks for watching. Bye.